And we're with Stephen Quayle tonight. Stephen, tell me a little bit about Admiral Forrestal.
Well, an amazing guy. First of all, he was the first Secretary of the Navy, but he was also one of the original founding members of Majestic 12, which Majestic 12 was a group that was created pretty much by the military to oversee all of the alien-related information, basically as a control mechanism to make sure that everything that came out or got out was filtered through them.
And that was during Truman's administration, right?
Absolutely. And Majestic 12 was originally organized by a guy by the name of General George C. Marshall in July of 1947 to study the Roswell-Magdalena UFO crash, recovery, and debris. And that was fascinating. Remember that he was probably the closest man in the world to Richard Byrd. Okay, that's what people have got to figure out, why he had this strange accident. He goes into Bethesda Naval Hospital. They put him in there, his fellow generals, because he's got two issues.
Now, is he in there as the Admiral or as the Secretary of the Navy?
Good question, as the Secretary of the Navy.
Okay.
He was replaced by a different general in Majestic, but they supposedly stated that he was having emotional issues. Well, what was bugging him, according to people that knew him, including his son, was he wanted to tell the American people what was going on. So out of the 16th floor of Bethesda Naval Hospital, he supposedly commits suicide. The fascinating thing about Admiral Forrestal, who became Secretary of the Navy, is that he was absolutely in great spirits. His own son said he would never have committed suicide. He was talking about his son about what they were going to do. He was looking forward to getting released.
Man.
And somebody somewhere says time to suicide. And by the way, Forrestal and Vince Foster are two of the highest-ranking men in the U.S. government who have ever committed suicide, or a better way to say it, have ever been suicided.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, Doug Hagman's done a fabulous job on Vince Foster's death. Doug's specialty is blood-stain evidence. And so I don't know, if people can recognize it, but there are certain things that you look for in suicide. And when you don't find those things, you say, okay, who had the most to gain?
Right.
And what Richard Byrd was more concerned about than everything, Admiral Byrd, was the fact that even in those days, they shared Eisenhower's concern about the military-industrial complex. The idea was if you keep everything in the dark, you can milk it for the cash benefit. In other words...
But let's make an assumption for a moment that Forrestal was about ready to go public, let's say, about Roswell.
Exactly. And also about, interestingly enough, about the Arctic, and then also about Operation High Jump, which we haven't even talked about tonight. We've done it before, but most people don't realize we went to war in Antarctica with a contingency of the Nazis over not only secret technology, but the finds that the Nazis located in Antarctica, which they called New Schwabenland. And after the Nazis, which is called Operation High Jump, again, George, it's on the page that we've put up for listeners. What I've tried to do is give them all this stuff. I mean, you and I can only touch on, so much in the time we have together, but all this stuff, all roads lead to Rome, and when you get to Rome, you find out Rome is not a very nice place.
Somebody tossed the Admiral right out the window.
16th floor. And the point is that, again, what, according to his son and those around him, what specifically Majestic at that point was concerned about is that he would spill the beans on what was found in the Arctic. He would spill the beans on what was found in the Antarctic. He was anti-United Nations, so obviously the globalists of his day didn't like him for that. And the point is that he believed that because of the way we had handled the closing of World War II, that the international, if you will, illuminists had pretty much taken control after World War II. And, when you look at Eisenhower and Eisenhower's trip to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and all of the cover that went into that story, in other words, to see the Roswell find, it becomes more and more obvious that to contain the truth and to keep the truth, a lot of people have died who have tried to bring out the truth.
Well, I got to tell you, the Admiral Byrd story is one of the strangest I've ever heard because it comes from someone of such credibility. And, he had his diary, It's just a bizarre story. I mean, to have his plane, as you say, the engine's cut off, and it's glided into this other land, Shangri-La, wherever it may be, within the center of the planet. The curvature, I guess, is ever so slight. He never realized he was making that spin right into it. And then these beans taking advantage and helping him. They were good beans, apparently, and then they let him go, and off he went. What a story.
Well, it's a huge story. And again, if this was just some guy that was flaky, I mean, you have Richard Byrd in the history of the Navy is considered, and in the history of exploration, I mean, you don't have a better pedigree of a human being or a braver man, a more adventurous man, a more honest man. So they can't assassinate his character.
Did he ever try to go public with this? Because he wrote these notes in a diary, but he really never said much about it when the events occurred when he came back, right?
Well, the whole thing is Forrestal and Byrd were planning on going together and going public with it, and Forrestal basically, when he was suicided, Byrd went into kind of I guess you'd almost say a self-imposed exile from the standpoint that the only thing he would allow at that point is his diary to be released after his death.
That probably scared the heck out of him.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, when you've got men that you respect and you think they're your friend, and by the way, I've never been in the military, so I don't understand how those guys think in a lot of realms, but I can tell you this, that a lot of our own military men in the different branches of the service, I mean, there are things that happen there when on turf and everything that leads in the death and destruction of each of them at other, our own country has got a history of killing our own,